And we are recording. So with me tonight is Hampshire County Coach Developer Austin Harris. Good evening, Austin.
Good evening. Hi, Rich. Hi, everyone.
Second surgery, called it the surgery just because opportunity for people to ask questions about their own coaching experiences that they would go in prior lockdown and maybe beyond that as well. So just an opportunity to ask an expert in Austin.
Oh God!
But just have
That's
a
dangerous.
chat.
That's dangerous. Don't big me up too much, Rich.
So if you do have a question, we have a chat function. There's a little speech bubble. It appears in different places depending on which device you're on. But if you have a look, there's a little speech bubble. And if you have a question, put it in there. Or as long as we don't interrupt each other, I'm quite happy for people to unmute themselves and ask.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you've got one straight away, let me know. If not, I'll ask Austin a little question I prepared earlier. It's all good. I'll ask you a question, but yeah, just let us know, guys, and happy for you to join in. So Austin, my question for you is, how important is it for coaches to get support when they're coaching a team? So, yeah, if you picture the scene, ideal world, you probably have two assistant coaches, maybe parent helpers, whatever format that is. But if you don't have that, obviously you just have to sort of get on with it. But how important it is to try and get that and try and get those parents, I suppose, wanting to do that.
Yeah, it's a real difficult one, and it's something that actually as a CCD we talk about it a lot, because obviously we spend all this wonderful time together with our learners on course. So on a level 1 it'll be 7 days, 7 workshops, and on a level 2 it's considerably longer. And then my concern is, well, where do they go when they leave us in terms of that face-to-face interaction? So one of the things that I certainly recommend all our coaches to do, and I've done it across level 1, I'm a level 2 delivery, is to try and get your parents on side early. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I really recommend that coaches do is maybe at the start of the season, hire a pub or hire a function room, or even host it down at your club, where you kind of host a bit of a meeting where you kind of outline everything that you're going to be doing over the course of the season. Reason why we do that is probably with many hats on. First and foremost, if you have just done a new qualification, it's an opportunity for you to be quite honest with the kids and the parents, saying, listen, I've been on a course, I'm going to have a go at this, these new ideas this year. So kind of maybe give them a forum and an opportunity to ask questions about it. Yeah. Also, it's quite a nice opportunity as well, maybe to outline your strategy and your philosophy for the season. And it's probably at that point that you might want to start asking for some help in the form of volunteers, because as you quite rightly said, Rich, if you're lucky enough to have an assistant, some coaches out there might have 2, some of them even might have position specific in terms of maybe a goalkeeping coach or something like that. That's great, because you can bounce ideas off in each other and you can self-reflect on both training and post-training. If you don't have that, then it can be quite a lonely experience on the touchline. So kind of the more interaction that you have with your army of people that are around you, and parents and your players are obviously a big part of that, then they're better. So that certainly would be something that I definitely promote in terms of my delivery on course and post course, in terms of getting those support networks quite firm early doors for the season ahead.
That's interesting, and I'm not going to just I'm going to say the name Bjorn. Just get ready to speak in a sec. I've got a question for you. You're obviously Ascot United. Correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously loads of teams there. How important do you find that the parent carers, parent helpers, at Ascot in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on the coach sometimes, because I mean, every coach is different. That's their opinion, how they want to run teams. I'm always a person who feels like the more the better, as long as you're on the same page. Because there's no point in having loads of different coaches if one's telling the kid to play one way, and you as a club, or as your philosophy as a club's to play a certain way. I don't know if I've mentioned it recently, but we're just about to set up an Ascot DNA and a booklet that will go out to all the parents, all the coaches, saying this is how the first team. This is what the first team's philosophy is. This is what our youth league philosophy is. This is what our community football philosophy should be. And then it all links in. Obviously, that isn't dictatorial, and they have to stick to that. But it gives them some guidance on how we're trying to go as a club and what our philosophy is. When you were talking there about meeting in a pub and all that kind of stuff, that might be difficult in the near future.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
But one thing that one of my under-10s coaches sent me recently, just a review for him, was his own philosophy and his coaching philosophy and his ideas, and because he's transitioning up to 9-a-side, and
great, and
he's going to give that to his parents and his players, as in how he wants to run things and stuff, which I thought was really good.
Yeah, it's a really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And it sounds like, you know, whatever you guys feel comfortable with. And certainly at the moment, obviously, probably Teams and on these online webinars are just rife everywhere at the moment. I see them all on social media. And there's quite a lot of grassroots coaches that are reaching out to parents that way. But I kind of got the idea and the suggestion from when I was a teacher. My phone only ever used to start ringing when I was a teacher, when parents didn't understand what was going on. So I kind of transferred that into my role as a coach educator, going, well, let's take all the possible questions and elephants out of the room early doors. This is what the season's going to look like. This is what our playing philosophy is. This is how we're going to deal with things like game time, playing positions, all those kind of stumbling blocks that you at some point are guaranteed to face over the course of the season. If you iron those out early doors, but more importantly, give them a forum. And it's great that you're coming up with a handbook, because it shows that you're going to go into detail and stuff like that.
It's not something we've done. We've normally left
it's
all
good.
The coaches
it's really
their
good
own devices. So
yeah.
I definitely think from what you've just said there, it does make complete sense. I mean, I've just started a Q&A based on listening to the podcast that the Berks and Bucks guys have done. I've set my own one up, and I think we've done 3 or 4 now.
It's good.
It's great.
And yeah, I'm trying to think what my point was then. It's just gone.
It's a really good idea, and you know, thank you for engaging with your parents like that, because if we can try and get as many grassroots coaches thinking as innovative as what you guys are and what your club is, then you know, hopefully a lot of the problems and a lot of the questions which are going to happen, and you know, there is no one size fits all for this. There's no way that we're going to appease everybody. But
I've remembered what I was going to say now. So
go on, please do.
Sorry, in the chat we had on the Q&A the other day, we had I don't know if you know a chap called Ben Ogden who runs Catalan Soccer. I don't know if you've come across him.
No, I haven't. No.
So Ben Ogden is a co-owner. He runs Catalan Soccer, and he kindly came on, and I've watched a lot of his videos, and his videos are really clear and concise, and they're good for coaches and how to do different formations. And what he said is they went to Spain and studied for a month to look at the differences between Spanish culture and English culture. So he tried to bring that into his. I think they coach 800 or 900 kids. They coach now.
Wow.
And what he was saying is that he has a philosophy as a club, and he makes all the parents sign that. So when they join, they have to sign. This is the way we're going to play out from the back. You know, we're going to make mistakes, but that is our philosophy, and you need to adhere to these certain rules. So, like you were talking there about, set the ground early, and so everyone knows. If you don't do that, you get the parents shouting on the sideline.
Of course you will.
Be accepted. So definitely, it's something.
No, it's a really good point. Thank you for sharing, and well done for what you're doing down at Ascot. It sounds very exciting indeed. So thank you.
Keep up the good work, Bjorn. I'll start again. If you've got a reminder, if you've got any questions, just maybe unmute yourself or just use the chat box. I've got a question for you again, Austin, though.
Yeah, go on.
I've come heavy-handed today.
That's fine.
What equipment is normally in an Austin Harris kit bag, like for equipment for coaching sessions?
I tend to speak it a little bit different, Rich, to be honest, because I think if you look at the generation that we're dealing with nowadays, they need something a bit different. So alongside your traditional balls, bibs and cones, I've got a rugby ball, I've got a handball, I've got a tennis ball, I've got a Nerf, one of those Nerf throwy things. Reason for those is just throw those in every now and again, certainly in the form of arrival activities, just do something a bit different. I'm a little bit concerned at the moment that there's quite a lot of the kids, certainly that I've come across in Hampshire, that are just specialising too early in one sport. So there's a lot of our kids with the problems we've got in education at the moment, and the fact that funding in PE is being cut. Quite a lot of our kids don't really get the exposure to different sports that maybe I had as a kid. And the studies that show that transferable sports from things like rugby, from handball, all the hand-eye coordination, etc., is important in terms of player development. So I've got those toys in that I'll throw. In terms of other kind of not your traditional equipment, I'm a big fan of using captain's armbands. So I always have those in my pocket. I don't always use them. I've also got, depending on the age group, a variety of different target cards. Again,
armbands.
So the captain's armbands, I've literally just got them in there. I'm a firm believer that captains are not developed or grown on a match day. They're actually start honing their skills during training.
Right.
So I tend to assign maybe coaches, maybe players, that are struggling from a social or a psychological perspective. They might just need a bit of a boost or that opportunity to show some ownership. Then you can kind of throw them off the cliff to a certain extent. They don't want to get into that zone, but at the weekend they're in the most chaotic sport in the world, which is football. So we've got to try and prepare them for that. So I've used them for those. Sometimes I use captain's armbands for the quieter members of the group that might just need a bit of a push, that might just need a little bit of a confidence boost. So, we use captain's armbands at the weekend, and it's a vital role within a team environment. But I like to use them in training as well, and I certainly don't just have one armband. I might have two or three.
I've never used them in training. It's a good point.
Yeah. So just have a go at it. And again, what I wouldn't suggest is you do it all the time, because the problem is if you use them all the time, then they lose their power and they lose their effectiveness, and it just becomes a bit of a token item. So I've got them there. Other things, Rich, that I've tried. Last year, I had a boy that really struggled with his awareness. So I came up with a real off the scale idea of a pirate eye patch. I know it might seem a bit weird, but he was only ever checking his left shoulder. So I put an eye patch on his left eye, so we had to only check his right, and that seemed to work. So I've got like real quirky stuff like that I just kind of come up with in terms of whatever a player might need. I've just got some sweatbands, and I've spray painted those. So rather than using bibs, I've used them with maybe some of the younger kids. That again, that whole idea of awareness. So I don't know. I think we've got to get away from the traditional balls, bibs and cones. I think that those are great and given now, but we're dealing with a generation that are being brought up using quite interactive stuff. And so I think that the more innovative that you can be, it really helps with that engagement and that player interaction.
I've been telling our chairman at Ascot for a long time, I've been there 4 years now.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, we've had balls, bibs and cones for the last 50 years, Bjorn, or whatever. And that's the way it's done. I said, yeah, but it's not like that anymore.
No,
he goes,
it's not.
It's worked. And I'm like, well, so anyway, I went out and bought my own pop-up 4x2 bazooka goals and bought my own hurdles and bibs and, all that kind of stuff. Because you have to, because kids need, like you say, that it's changed now. They want to be engaged. I'll take, like you say, I'll take rugby balls, I'll take different size balls, tennis balls, everything.
Good.
So,
it is interesting. Sorry, go on.
Goals the better. I say more goals the better sometimes.
Absolutely.
I like a lot of the sessions where you have 4 pop-up goals and you play 4v4. You do it individually, and then you can break it up to 2v2s and then 4.
Yeah.
So having goals as opposed to cones is actually kids, much prefer it hitting the back of the net or hitting the post than it hitting a cone. Or did it go in or didn't it go in?
Yeah. I think if you, as an adult, I think Pete Sturgis said it last week, didn't they? Those who listened live or listened again, is that like you got to see if you enjoy the session as well. So if like the smallest thing about I can tell you right now, if I was in a session and there was cones and a goal, and that in an R and Bjorn that you just said about did it go in, did it not, that would be great. You don't tend to shoot properly with cones either.
No, you're right.
But Mick Lewin said last week, I asked some of the questions to Mick last week, and he said
doesn't like a lot of cones.
No,
no, it's interesting. And
it is interesting.
And again, what I would say is that what we don't want it to do is take away from the learning objective. So the danger is sometimes that we put too many toys and tools into there, and it takes away from what the focus is. But I will always have my pockets with stuff in them. I may never use them in a session, but I'm a firm believer of using the right tool at the right time with the right player. And again, the more that you get to know your players, and the more that you kind of understand what their needs is, then you'll just naturally develop your own coaching kit bag and toolkits you'll just dive into that and expand it as you see fit. So Bjorn, it's great that you do.
Laminated challenge cards.
Yeah,
as well,
brilliant.
That I put in my pocket, So if you're in a session, right,
that's
it. That. Could you do that kind of thing?
Brilliant.
Give that skill a shout or try. So they're good as well. Some kids engage them, and some
of them don't.
Whatever it is.
Some of them don't. Some of them will laugh at it. Some of them will look at it. I used that. I remember on a CPD event a few months ago. And the kid came up to me afterwards and he wanted to do Swapsies with me because they were like match attack cards. And that just made me laugh because he just wanted to swap because he had one that I didn't have. And you know, it's just great. It's just, you know, I think you said it yourself. The more innovative and the more kind of different that we can be out there, then hopefully the closer our relationship will be between player and coach, and that is really valuable. So
I did on a board once, you know, a whiteboard, a big one. I had a huge one, and I did a load of skills down the left-hand side, and we were doing sort of more of a game scenario, and I put 10 skills down, and everyone's names across the top, and every time they did one of those skills, they had to run over and tick it with a pen. You know, that went down quite well, and at the end they're like, "How many did you do?" You know, I did that one 3 times. I was like, "All right,
well done." Really good. Well done. Little things. That's it. Well done.
Well, just throw the question out there. We've had the question from Hassan, which I'll ask you in a sec.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I suppose the most random thing in anyone's equipment kit bag for a session, I'd love to know. Just, I think the eye patch is that one.
Yeah, that was an interesting. Do you know what? That was an interesting conversation to the parent and the kid, but it worked. It worked. Bless him. He and I tell you, the rest of the coaches are looking at me, going, "What is Austin doing?" He's got so this poor kid. He's got an eye patch on. And I'm thinking I'm going to get a safeguarding order. I'm going to get in trouble. But I had to go and speak to the parents. And you know, it was just something that I came up with. I thought to myself, he's got the same problem. He's only ever looking over his left shoulder. He wants to play in centre midfield. He's going to have to start playing bilaterally and in a full circle. So why not try it? And I mean, I didn't use it all the time, but it certainly just trained him that for that hour and a half session that I had with him. The only way he weren't going to get kicked up in the air was checking his right shoulder. Then it was just about repetition and good habits. And you know, I think that again, it was just another example of a toy and tool that I had with me, and it was a problem that I'd come across as a coach. And at the end of the day, that's what our jobs are. Our jobs are to create an environment.
Yeah, but I thought about it a lot because I've got one particular kid that doesn't lift his head up. So I've done the headbands up, but I've actually thought about getting a neck brace.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
okay.
Honestly, thought about putting a neck brace on him. So he's physically when he had the ball, struggled to have his head down. But I haven't done it yet.
I'm not sure what your risk assessment will be for that. To be honest with you, but
it's come across my mind a few times.
You know what? I like your thinking, and I like your way out thinking, and I think we keep on saying it. But the coaches that just do things a bit different are certainly the ones that the players will remember and will probably listen to. And I'm a firm believer of that. So well done. Just make sure that you check your public liability insurance.
Let's have a sore neck for a week.
Let's move on to a question now.
Of course.
Stan Austin. It says, "Hi Austin, good to see you. I know you're a big encourager of students going on to do their masters. However, I speak to other coaches who say there is no need for it to grow as a coach and build a career in an industry. What's your opinion on this, and why do you value going for masters so much so?"
It's a good question. Thanks, Hassan, for posting that. I think it depends really on where you want to go in your career. So if I now go back to the last 17 years in my time in academy football, I think the problem that you've got now, Rich, is that coaching is very much seen as a career and a profession. When I went into it 17 years ago, it wasn't. So off the back of that, and the fact now that if you look at the coaching courses, they're a lot more accessible, they're a lot cheaper, you're getting more support than you ever had before. People are now really using and seeing the football coaching industry and coaching in general as a career pathway. With that has caused the other problem that we've now got quite a lot of coaches that are graduating every single year, but there's only so many jobs that are out there. So I think there is a little bit of an unwritten rule that the more that you can kind of bring to the table in terms of your CV, in terms of your experience, which obviously doing a master's, whether it's something to do with sports science, whether it's sports psychology, then clearly when you go for that job interview or you go for that role in a club, you're definitely going to be selling yourself ahead of someone that might not have that. So I think that's probably what the kind of the unwritten rule is in terms of if Hassan is interested in going into elite football. My advice to anybody out there is, if you are going to do a master's, or if you are going to go down and kind of go down that route of further education, try and specialise in something, not just football or football coaching. So maybe go down the sports science background, really specialise in maybe sports psychology, because when it comes to the jobs that are out there, the more kind of strings to have that you have to your bow, kind of the better that you will look in terms of what you could bring to the club in terms of their development and their team. So, you know, if you're asking me personally, I think I was probably just I know personally that I got jobs off the back of the fact that I had a teaching background, because I had something different. I didn't have the elite playing background that a lot of the people that I work with did, so I had to bring something else to the table, and I think the fact that I came from a teaching background, like I've just said, helped. So I certainly would not discourage it, but if you are going to do anything that is kind of high level qualification, PhD, masters, try and focus on something that is not just coaching, because everybody's doing their coaching badges now. Try and do something that's a little bit different and is really going to enhance your knowledge and experience. That would be my suggestion, really.
No, that's decent.
All right.
Hassan, you if you just want to mute yourself, you've got anything to add or ask again, just give you the opportunity to do that. You know about strings to the bow.
Yeah.
You mentioned there. We spoke to myself and Rivo spoke to the Wickham manager Gareth Ainsworth.
Yeah.
He's back. It's coming out on the podcast shortly, and he got his break into coaching because he said he never wanted to do it. He got his break because he learnt Spanish. So he learnt Spanish because he met his Venezuelan girlfriend, who's now his wife. So he picked up Spanish. There was a Spanish manager in charge, or Spanish speaking manager in charge, and needed that. Yeah. What do you call it? Between players.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
A link. And he got his way in that way.
Yeah. I think he started as like a player liaison officer, wasn't it, or something? And I think he got the kind of that route. And well, there's a really good example of someone that clearly had a very good playing career, which he did, and he had that on his CV. But you know, sometimes you just need that in, and that in might not be a B or an A license. It might be the fact that you've got another language, or you've got a degree in physiotherapy, or you've done so many modules, or you've got an expertise in something different. So, and not only that. Sorry, go on, Bill. Yeah.
I was going to say, a lot of clubs now, when like they're advertising, say you have to have a minimum of a B license or an A license. I mean, I'm even seeing it for assistant manager roles for under 16s and under 18s. I've got to have a level B minimum.
Yeah. And it is, you know, and I think it's great at the moment. And actually, if I was to do my time all over again, I will probably go back to uni and certainly do a different degree than what I'm doing, because there's so many universities out there now that are offering football related degrees or sports studies or coaching related degrees. These just weren't available kind of when I left school. So I think that, you know, if you are a young student and you are wanting to go down that road, then it's a brilliant opportunity. But just think 4 or 5 years from now. Think about your CV. What is it going to look like? What experiences am I going to have? And am I really putting myself in the shop window when I come to press that apply button and potentially apply for jobs? That will probably be my advice. But anything that we can do CPD wise, away from coaching, to bring into the pedagogy of teaching and coaching, it's only going to help us and help our players in the longer run. So, yeah,
that's really good advice, Austin. And I think I suppose everyone's journey is different, so there's no right or wrong. But hopefully that does answer your question slightly. But please let us know if you've got anything else to add. Elliot says Jose the same in terms of the translator, so that's
absolutely
how we. Is that at Barca with Bobby Robson?
It was, that's right. Yeah.
So there you go. Now he certainly was regarded as the special one a few years back. Bjorn, you're unmuted. I'll ask you the question. You've got a question for Austin, mate, around 9 to 11 aside transition.
Yeah, so what would you say, going from 9 to 11 aside, when you first get back to training, would be the key things to work on? Bearing in mind it's obviously not a massive change. You know, it's only a couple of players. It's a lot bigger. What would you say?
Absolutely.
The key things to focus on?
What's your size of area, Bjorn, that you have to train? That you have to train on? Are you quite lucky that you've got
quarter of a pitch, quarter of a full-size pitch? You're probably looking at.
All right. So I think the first, just from a design perspective, is to try and link everything that you do to what they're going to experience at the weekend in terms of 11-11 format. So try and maximise the size of your area as much as possible, even if it's just taking the cones to the full extent of the size of that area. If you do that all across all your practice designs, then that's potentially another couple of meters that they're going to get used to in their leg and their gait and their movement. In terms of your actual content, start to really have a look at more of the more complex principles of play. So probably in the foundation phase, you've been encouraging them to love the ball, master the ball, and win the ball back when they've lost it. They're going to have to start getting an understanding now of topics like compactness, because the pitch is going to get bigger now. They can't just run around like headless chickens to win the ball back. They've got to start understanding that process of when do I go, who goes, etc. Certainly start to focus a lot more on the cover and balance topics. So if I go, what's the relationship to my friend? Where does he or she have to be? These are probably decisions that they may have had to come across to a certain extent at 9v9 and 7v7, but when you get to 11v11, you've got to have more of a tactical understanding. So certainly have a look at that physical aspect. Little things as well. I'm guessing that the games are the halves going to be longer next season. Are they going to have a little bit more?
60 minutes last year. I assume it goes up to 5. I don't know.
Yeah, so just little things like that. I call them 1%ers. So just maybe add a couple more minutes onto all your practices before they have a drinks break. In the long run, it's going to get them ready for the weekend and potentially maybe playing another 5 or 10 minutes before they get to half time or on the end of a quarter. So it's just little things like that, really. The key thing is, though, is to drip feed it. Don't do it all at once, because for some players, it is a big jump. Going from 9v9 to 11v11 in terms of the four corner model and what their learning is now got to look like, it is quite a big jump. And you know, my experience to anybody that's working on those transition age groups, under 12s going into under 13s, or whenever you decide to do it, depending on your league, is really just clear the slate in terms of targets. Don't put too much pressure on the players. Understand as well that quite a lot of them will start to go through puberty and will start to have all the growth related. So it's really important that you kind of just press reset, slow down, link everything, like I said, to 11v11 and work backwards. So yeah, it's an exciting age group. It's an age group it's an age change as well, that school starts to change a lot. Hormones will start to come into play. There's a lot of grenades in a pot, which coaches start to have to deal with, just on top of the fact that they've now got an extra 2 players and the pitch has got bigger and the goals have got bigger. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of kids will hopefully. I mean, I feel like it's going to be easier because I'm so used to. I've experienced 11 side for most of my life.
Yeah,
but they obviously haven't, apart from when they're playing FIFA and all that kind of stuff online and what they're watching on telly. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. Just if I can ask another question, that I was listening to a coach earlier, and it was a Belgium coach talking about the Belgium youth system. This was 2 or 3 years ago, I think. And he was talking about how they stay 8 till 8.
Of course, please do. Yeah.
I think they stay 8 till 8 until under 12s or something.
Yeah.
I just want, I was thinking to myself, it's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea.
I do feel we go up to 11 aside and 9 aside too quickly.
Yeah, and it's something. I mean, if you give you an example, so the Dutch, for example, will go to 11v11 at under 10s going into under 11s, so they go 2 years earlier than we do. The Germans go, I think, at the end of under 10s. So every country can do it a little bit differently. I'm from your thought process that actually the longer that we can keep them in that environment of your fundamentals that Pete Sturgis talked about last week, so love the ball, master the ball, excite with the ball, lots and lots of touches, small pitches, lots of opportunities to make mistakes, playing different positions, etc. The longer that we can do that, by the time they then move into big boy and girl football, which is really what 11v11 is, then they're probably going to have a bit more of a broader toolkit. Unfortunately, though, obviously we're governed in terms of leagues and the structure. We're also governed in the fact that when they do make that jump, then they need to get ready for it.
I'm surprised the Dutch go that soon, to be honest.
Yeah, they do, and actually, if you look at the Dutch as well, they don't really go through the same size of balls that we do. So they only really have 2 sizes of balls, and they go to a size 5 at the same time as well. So if you ever look at Dutch kids at that age group, they tend to have stronger leg muscles in terms of their kicking power. So if you ever go and play international tournaments over there, you see Dutch boys and girls of under 11s and 12s switch the play. They will be considerably further ahead than what we will be, just because their format, they've kind of had the best part of 12 months exposure to it than what we do in this country. There are certainly pros and cons for it. But at the end of the day, though, just control what you can control. And if your team are going to 11v11 next year, then prepare for it, get excited for it. But like I said, just maybe lower your expectations and understand that next year for them is very much a transition year. So, all right.
Yeah.
Cool. Cheers, chaps. Just going to, Elliot, just get ready to unmute yourself, because I just want to make sure if this is connected to the same, what your comment was there is connected to the same topic. and you sent across that picture that I've just put up on the screen. Hopefully people can see.
Yeah, great.
You there, Elliot?
Hello, yeah. Sorry.
Hi, Elliot.
You all right?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I'll just I've actually been looking at this the last few weeks about linking your model. So like not just going right,
Brilliant.
what formation are we going to play this year, and then just go with it. Actually having a plan.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want the game to look like when they get to 11 aside, and then build, like you just said about building backwards.
Yeah.
So the players, maybe if you're working with a front three, that could be the same all the way through. So you could just say, well, you're going to be the Firmino, Salah, and Mane, and as it goes through, they can link it. So even if you're working with smaller groups, so say be a 3 versus 2 attack, they'll be able to see how it links into the bigger picture as you move up. Would you say?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. Oh, gosh, I think if I knew the answer to that, Elliot, I think I'd be a very, very wealthy man, sir, because I think would answer the main key of how to develop players. But the Belgians, I think you put in here that, so in Belgium, they actually play 4-4-3-3. That's the only formation that they allow the kids to play.
I think they've changed it recently.
It has, that's right. So it's now gone 4-2-3-1, I believe. Am I right?
Yeah.
So everybody in Belgium has to play 4-4-2-3-1. So everything that they do in terms of their coach education system, in terms of their level 1, level 2, all the way through to A license, will be teaching the coaches to kind of master that. Their rationale behind it is because that's what they think works for them. It's what their opinion is. And who are we really to go and challenge that? Because, you know, they will have enough evidence to back that up. I think, again, going back to what the conversation I would be on, there's always advantages and disadvantages of doing any sort of development in terms of formations and pigeonholing kids too early. If you're asking my personal opinion, I think the more exposure that kids can get to different aspects of the game and different formations and different positions is only going to help them holistically in the long run. If you look at the age of kids, by the time that they enter senior football, they've got anywhere between 20 and 25 years. So why do we need to pigeonhole a kid at under 6 or under 7s that you're going to be a striker? I think that we've done that for too much time. So, you know, that's just my own opinion on it. Other coaches and other clubs will have different opinions on it. Ultimately, as long as you can back it up with some evidence, and as long as you can sell it to your kids and your parents, then, you know, who are we to challenge? But I certainly quite like that approach that the Belgians have, that they kind of start with the end in mind and work backwards. It's a very different approach than what we have in this country.
I think
it's interesting.
I completely agree. I wasn't saying about pigeonholing.
No, of course not. No,
I just meant in terms of if they can see, well, why do we play a 3 up front when we're
of course.
and then you go, well, this because we're going to play 11 aside, and even though the pitch gets bigger, the movements are kind of the same and
Absolutely.
the way they interact. So they're not just going, right, now we're playing 11 aside and now we're going to change it. So I don't know. Yeah, and
it's actually lots of repetition, isn't it? I mean, the argument would be from the Belgians would say that kids from a young age are getting repetition, as you say, and they start to get those pictures subliminally in their head. So when they go from 5v5 into 7v7, they've already kind of started to have lots and lots of repetition over those movements. And then you're adding another player in next year and then a few more players the year after. So I guess that's probably what their mindset is. I don't really know too much about it, but it is an interesting way. It's an interesting philosophy. And, you know, it
seems to have worked recently.
Yeah, it has worked. It has worked.
So,
and I think the danger is that we spend too much time looking what everyone else does and we take the eye off our own ball. And I think that we've done that enough in this country. I think that we finally probably got something at the moment that seems to work for us. And I think what's important is that you will just pick the right bits for you and bring it into your own environment in terms of developing your own players. And that's something that I would definitely encourage you to do is to don't just look at our model, go and have a look at other countries and kind of mix it all together and you kind of start developing your own. That's it. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
Good.
Thanks
Elliot. Good discussion. Good.
Yeah. Elliot's obviously a fan of Hazard as well, aren't you, Elliot?
He's not
bad. Brian asks, I think just following on from Bjorn's question now, around, again, it's that whole transition thing about going moving to 7v7.
Yeah.
So I suppose the same what we just discussed over the last 5-10 minutes would apply there.
It is definitely, again, in terms of topics and focus, probably not a lot changes. The only thing that I would suggest that you start introducing to your players is probably maybe start having a look at topics like delay. So rather than just using press as your default principle of play to go and win the ball back, because the pitch starts to get a little bit bigger, the kids will need to have that tool in their toolkit, that actually we can't all just go and win the ball. We might just have to slow down a little bit, maybe just drop off, start to form a bit of a block, and then start to learn things like triggers. But again, what we don't want to do is put a date stamp on any principles of play. You will teach those, and you will kind of use that in terms of your own coaching plans as you see fit. But certainly, as you start to get up the age groups, obviously football gets a lot more. It changes in terms of the physical aspect across all the four corners, and as a result of that, we as coaches have kind of got to feed their mind and feed their tactical and feed their general knowledge, which will just increase as their brains develop and as they get more of a thirst for the game. So, but I think the biggest shift is probably going from 9v9 into 11v11, because that for quite a lot of players, certainly across the four corners, is quite a big jump. It's quite a scary jump, but it's one that we need to be quite sensitive with.
One of the biggest jumps I've found so far, and obviously I've not got to the 11s side, is the 7s to 9s.
Yeah,
the size of the goals.
That's it.
You put your goalkeeper in, and he can't even touch the crossbar.
No, you're right, Dion. You're right.
And it's like, you know, when you play against some teams, they're like, "Oh, just shoot. He's never going to save it." You know.
No. And again, I think that's one of the problems that we've got, obviously, with councils at the moment. I really do sympathise, and their budgets are being cut. So not every, if you look at the size of the goals, some of them will go from mini soccer into 11v11. So, you know, if you'll go and play on some away pitches where you might literally have a child that physically is just nowhere near going to get anywhere near the shots. And again, in an ideal world, we'd all be playing on the correct pitches and the correct environment and things like that. But what I would say to that is, you know, don't make a big deal out of it. I'm sure that you don't. If you make a big deal out of it, then it kind of gives your kids a bit of an excuse. What I would say is that every kid likes scoring goals, and you know, if it's been your downfall one week, it's a long enough season that you'll get an opportunity another week. So see it as more of a development opportunity than rather a bit of an Achilles heel. But no, you're right. You do make a very big point, and it's probably something that is more of a facilities issue. Rich, I'm sure you'd agree, in terms of trying to get everything sorted and getting all the right goals and the right size pitches, etc.
Obviously, the cost does come into that. And
absolutely,
in terms, I know there's lots of people on this call who agree. Well, it was only 5, but people said this before. Is around just not trying to force it into 11-side real football straight away. Like I think Pete said it last week around like throw-ins and just letting kids be kids and enjoying their football.
Definitely.
Whatever.
And we mustn't forget about that fun factor, Rich. I think sometimes we do that when we get to 11v11, because it starts to get closer to what we watch on Match of the Day, and that whole idea of results again. And parents, it's interesting if you see the dynamic with parents in that jump from 9v9 into 11v11. All of a sudden, league tables take more of an interest in cup competitions and things like that. So I echo what Pete said and what you've said, that just keep that fun factor, and if anything, go back to the roots. I almost imagine that they're under 5s and 6s again, because those kids are going to have to deal with a lot in that jump from 9v9 to 11v11, not only in terms of the spatial difference, but the decisions that they're going to make. Some kids that could have been experts, and I was one of them. I was a late developer. I loved mini soccer because the pitch helped me, because I was small. The minute you put me on 11v11 pitch, I was looking around going, I'm not getting the ball here, and there's no way that I can do that recovery run. So it's important that we've got patience and time with that, and more importantly, coaches have really got to have that in the back of their mind, that it's almost the start of their next journey, and the journeys will look different for every player. So, no, I think it's a really good point.
Just when you said about late developer there, those who saw with Andy Ritchie deliver a futsal CPD on Saturday just gone, and there's a video, and I know we didn't show properly because of the connection, but go and have a look at it if you do on our website. Because it shows futsal footage from 2005 of a tall Brazilian who was playing exactly how we were playing today, and Felipe Coutinho. So he was an early developer. He shot above everyone. When you look at him now, though, you see him as a small technical player. So it's really interesting. Just touching on what you said there about you being a late developer. Obviously, everyone's different, and we'll share that. Hassan's got another question for you, Austin. It's a good question. I like it. It says, what does a good coach look like for Austin Harris?
Oh, gosh.
It's used your full name. I love it.
Oh, dear. I feel like I'm on a job interview here. What does a good coach look like for me? Okay. Adaptable is a big thing. Student of the game is another really big attribute that I think is important for modern day coaches nowadays. I have a really honest, reflective side to them. So one that is open to feedback, open for change is a big thing. We don't like change in this country, Rich. I think it's maybe a cultural thing. I'm not sure, but in football especially. So self-reflection's key. I think other skills that are really valuable is that whole someone that's able to communicate, and not just communicate one way, but have a variety of tools in your communication toolkit. The way that you communicate with parents, the way that you deal with players, etc. They're all going to be different. And I think the biggest thing, and it goes back to the conversation that we had with Bjorn at the start, just be a bit different and a bit innovative. I've worked with some fantastic coaches in my career, and certainly in the last 10 years in the academy world, and the ones that have really stuck in with me are the ones that did things a bit differently. The ones that might have thrown a different ball in there, or the ones that maybe spoke a little bit differently. They were the ones that I kind of looked at and thought, you know what, I'm going to magpie that, and I'm going to bring that into my own coaching and playing philosophy. So that's probably, I don't know whether I've answered the question there or not, Rich, because I think it's a really difficult question to answer, because every coach is different. And I think one of the biggest things that we want coaches to be is that we want them to be true to themselves. We want them to have their own values and their own coaching and playing philosophy. But I certainly look at, in my career, they were probably the 4 or 5 ideas and trends that the coaches that I've really engaged with and taken stuff from had. So hopefully, Hassan, that helps.
Well,
and hopefully that is you, sir. Go on, Bjorn. Yeah, please.
I mean, I agree with everything you said. Is someone that plans
Absolutely,
sessions and plans what they're going to do, and they get from the training to the game. I mean, there are a lot of coaches I know, and I've helped some where they just turn up and the session look an absolute mess. I mean, you could still plan a session; it can go messy, but there's a difference.
Yeah. And I think that comes through under that idea of being a student of the game, because if you're naturally a student of the game off the pitch, then your preparation for when you're on the pitch will come into that. And I think you're right, and I think it is something, Rich, that we face a lot when we're doing the level 1s, certainly into the level 2s, in terms of having a look at your plan do review process. It's a comment that I get all the time. Well, it's all right for you, Austin, because you're full time in this industry, but I don't have time to plan. So I know that we have to sell planning to coaches. I know that in terms of looking at the planning process and trying to individualize that for each coach is quite difficult for us as tutors. But I think you've hit the nail on the head. You know, we're dealing with a generation nowadays that they will tell within a couple of minutes if you've blagged it, or if you've just copied this off YouTube, because the engagement and certainly the learning won't be there. So planning will look different for everybody, but I totally echo that. I think people that are going to dedicate time for planning and self-reflection, like I've touched upon, is really important.
That's good, thank you. Hassan, again, just comment or just unmute yourself if you're comfortable to do so. But that was decent.
Thanks, Hassan. Really good question.
Yeah,
he's got really
on
good questions tonight, Rich.
I know he's on a hat trick. Can you get us for the third? Brian asks, Austin, what would you change or introduce to the foundation level to develop the future player?
Oh, wow. Got to be careful there. You're recording this, because Pete Sturgis was on last week, and that's his baby. What would I change? Should I give a very FA answer and say nothing? Yeah. Nothing, because it's perfect. I don't know. I'm a firm believer of more ball time, more balls, and more game time for the kids. I think that, for me, is a really, really, really key component of foundation phase. And I think that the reason why they're important is that if you are going to love the ball and master the ball, the best way to do that is to just have lots and lots of touches with it. And the best environment to do that is through the power of games. So I actually think that, if I'm honest with you, we don't need to reintroduce anything. And I think that the more games and the more contact with the ball and the more opportunities that we give kids to go and express themselves, I think the more creativity that we're going to create in this country, which I think is something that over the years we've certainly stifled and we've taken away from kids, because we've just been obsessed with passing. and we've been obsessed with creating robots, because that's what we see on Match of the Day, and we see teams demolish teams in terms of possession, etc. But if you look at Jadon Sancho and Sterling when they were kids, they were playing football on the street. They weren't passing; they were taking players on and things like that. So that really for me is just to carry on with that, because I still don't think at the moment, Brian, that we've got to where we need to be for that. I still think that we need to keep on really preaching that message of love the ball, master the ball, excite with the ball, which I know Pete would have gone through with you and more next week, and the more games, environments, and as Bjorn has said brilliantly at the start, loads of different types of games, different balls, different sports, 4-goal game, 5-goal game, 1-goal games, loads of different innovative and creative approaches to make sure that the kids come back next week, because that's ultimately what we want to do. We want to create the next generation of future England players that are going to appear on podcasts in 10 years or 20 years from like this, Rich, that that they will become coaches and they'll kind of pass that passion down the conveyor belt. And that really is what future England player is all about. Yes, the dream is to produce your next Lionesses and Lions, but the reality is let's produce the next generation of people that are going to share our passion that we've got to their next generation. And I think that hopefully those two things will go a long way with that.
I think at grassroots, at this kind of level, at Ascot level, for me, is time as well, because you only get them 1 hour a week.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the SYL section, which is the Sunday, the harder section from under 10s to under 16s at Ascot. And one thing I've pushed for training twice a week, because I think that's massive. And I know obviously it's hard sometimes because some sport and other sport goes on, but in order for our elite section to develop, for me, you need a minimum of 2 hours with them kids a week training. So I've introduced that now from under 12 to 16. That will come into play.
It's really good.
Just while you're saying that, I mean, and talking about getting them on the ball and playing more games, you need them to train in more. So that's also
it hard. Is, and it's a double-edged sword. And again, beyond there's a lot of things there that you can't control in terms of their family lives and how far they travel and school and all their other commitments. But you're right. If we,
as well, and
absolutely, if we can get kids, the more contact time that they get with you, the more contact time they get in that environment outside of what they would do in the structured environment and match days at the weekend, then it's gonna, all those things that we've just talked about, it's of course gonna help develop more future England players. And that's hopefully where, with the improvement in facilities and floodlights and more all-weather pitches, then hopefully, and more cheaper all-weather pitches, hopefully, these are all the things that are going to help with that, and certainly grow the passion and the love of the game, which is what we want to do for future generations to come. So again, it's a really good point. Yeah,
totally. I know Hassan's unmuting himself, so he might want to say something in a second.
Hello.
Elliot, oh, go on, Hassan, go for it.
Hello, Hassan.
So still well, thank you. So it's just a little follow-up question from the previous question.
Of course.
About a good coach. What progression, or how would you say the coach should develop from, let's say, a youth foundation phase coach to an elite foundation, or from foundation?
Yeah, I think
go through
in terms of what advice would you give for someone that's got aspirations to do that?
Or I think, if you're a coach in a youth foundation phase, and as you start to go into that elite foundation phase, what would you expect to be different from that coach in terms of his attributes, his behaviour?
Yeah, so again, it's I kind of pitched my answer tonight probably at the grassroots, because I'm conscious that that's what this forum is about. But for someone that wanted to go into the elite environment, that's clearly where you would be expected to go and do your A license. And the reason for that is because obviously when you go and do your B and your A license, we would increase your game understanding, which is what elite players would expect. You'd be exposed to a lot more. I call it scuba diving in terms of looking at the 11v11 format, and they would certainly be skills and attributes. So to add another one onto the list in the elite environment, it would be your technical and tactical understanding, and it would also be linking into kind of your game understanding as well, because in that environment you're literally having to be probably the most proactive that you've ever been in your coaching career. You're not going to have the luxury of having hours and hours and hours to problem solve. You'll have to deal with the problems that you see fit, because certainly when you go into under 18s, going into under 23s, you're starting to get more into a results-based environment there. So the players will be looking to you as a guidance to make changes on the spot, to make tactical tweaks, to maybe play plays and different ideas, to come up with strategies for set pieces, etc. So that's kind of where the A license will come into its own, Hassan, and that's probably the reason why, you know, we want coaches not to rush through their qualifications, is to spend time on the grass, to go through the different levels, to experience going and mirroring that through their coaching qualifications, because that is a big jump. And my concern is that coaches try to do that jump too soon, and they struggle, and they get dropped, and they kind of get lost along their way in terms of their journey. So so hopefully that gives you a little bit of advice. Spend time on the grass, sir. Be a student of the game, very much so. But when you get into that environment, really make sure that your technical and tactical understanding is where it needs to be, because you will be challenged by the players and the environment.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Hassan.
All right.
Good to see you as well,
Thank
mate.
you.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Elliot, give you a chance to come back on. Just, he's wrote a couple of comments there. I just wanted, I don't know if it is in relation to what we spoke about a minute ago, or if it's a new topic. Elliot, hello.
Yeah. Hello. So the first comment was just about the futsal. I didn't catch that one. I'll have to catch up on that.
Okay, yeah.
But when he said about Coutinho, implications for actual coaching. Obviously, when you coach on your team, you'll be thinking about a Saturday, so you'll be like, what am I going to do? Whereas maybe if you actually take away from that sometimes and go, well, what do my players need to develop technically? So if you've got a player that is big and strong and just uses his pace all the time, you might go, right, we're going to play in a smaller area. So then without even having to coach him, he has no choice but to be technically better. So long term, because I think a lot of these podcasts, it's really good that we talk about striving to keep up. Yeah. But I think it's been said before. Sometimes we forget about those ones that because he's scoring loads of goals, we'll ignore him. But actually, if you ignore that, when he gets to 13, 14, all the other kids catch up with him. Absolutely. If his only skill set is using his strength, and then everyone else catches up, he's going to struggle. And so it's might be a way of challenging them.
I think you make a brilliant point and very articulate point, Elliot. The forgers, as they are called, they're the ones that I worry about the most, because you are right. We leave them. Oh, she's forging. She doesn't need any help, and we'll focus on those. The worry is that those forgers at some point will start to slow down. And actually what we find is that they will become a striving to keep up like that. And the worry is that have they got enough tools in their toolkits to help them get back up to where they were? And that is a real struggle, and it's a real problem. So that's kind of where understanding the four corner model, understanding your player profiling, make sure that you're really understanding your kids and understanding what their player development timelines look like becomes crucial. Because the danger is that we just focus on those that need the most development, and you forget about those that don't. And before you know it, they start to get complacent, they start to get lazy, they start to get into bad habits, or they just kind of start to lose a bit of that passion and love that they had maybe when their forging first started. So I echo what you say. Make sure that we focus on all the players and look at all their journeys and give them the right tools that they need at the right time to make sure that they're pushing up that development line as much as we can do. Yeah.
And my other point was just about you were saying about playing more games.
Absolutely, yeah.
A lot of the reading I've been doing podcasts, it seems to me that a lot of football is just instinct. Like I think we try sometimes to try and recreate perfect scenarios and go, right, if we practice this 3 versus 2 and do it 10 times, we're going to score on Saturday. When actually what's going to happen is something they're going to make a link. Because they've been playing games scenarios, it may not be exactly the same, but they're going to see something similar and be able to make a split-second decision rather than trying to manufacture it. So the more games you play, it's not about let the game be the teacher. It's you're forcing them into sort of scenarios where you get an outcome out. So I think Bjorn said about the 4-goal game. If you play a 4-goal game, you don't need to tell them to switch in the play. The team that switches the play is going to win because they're going to use the space better.
Of course.
And then even under 7 player might recognise if he's dribbling on the left and he looks up and he sees a player on his own, he might just make that link without being told switch it. he's going to make that link because he's done
That's
it
right.
and got success. So you're training instincts, not
Of course.
sort of repetition. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
And it's invisible coaching. I call that invisible coaching. And actually, that's the most powerful coaching. And that's the one that really produces that long-term memory rather than a short-term memory. So I think the other danger is as well, Elliot, is that sometimes when we go on Google, and I've been on Google myself, and you Google Barcelona drills, you will quite rightly see on there patterns of play. You'll see very bespoke passing practices, but they're doing that for a reason, because they're doing that to prepare for the team at the weekend. That might be a strategy or a certain pattern of play. It's certainly nothing that we want to be doing with under 6s and under 7s. So, you know, that's where that disconnect has to come in, that actually see the kids for the age that they are, that they're not mini adults, they're kids, and they've got a long way ahead and a lot of development to go in a games environment before they potentially get into that environment. So, no, good. Really good point.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. This is some good tunes behind you there, mate.
Sorry, I didn't even realise.
Mate, don't worry. Mate, it is what it is.
Turn the music down.
It's absolutely fine, mate. Honestly, look, we got a minute to go, but I don't want to ignore Brian's question.
Yeah, great.
He says, question for you all, which is great, by the way, another reason why we do all this.
Yeah, good.
Okay. What fun games do you like to use? We often use games from our youth, 10 points, headers and volleys without the headers. World Cup, all great knockout games they can take, come and play. Yeah. If you've got anything, Bjorn, Elliot, Austin, you got anything?
Bjorn, go.
Fun games. I mean, I always like using the catching tails. You know, the girls, you know, I do catching tails without the ball to start off with to get them nice and warm. And then I do it with a ball. And then I flip it on the other side. And rather than do catching tails, I stick it down their front. So they then have to learn to shield the ball as well. So they're doing the same, but shielding the ball, you know. Good. That's a good one they've done. Good. And another one I know, which is a bit of dribbling, where you go in and out of cones. Yeah. And ahead of you, if you've got enough footballs, you set up 4 cones and stick a ball on top. And then they have races to see who can knock the balls off the quickest, you know. So doing a bit of dribbling and knocking the balls off. You know, that's something they've done. That they've liked. Good. I do love the games where there's more goals, more than more goals, not just. Yeah, good. You know, I love lots of mini goals. So,
good. I think if you're asking me, I love handball. I think handball works really well. But sometimes I just let them play and just go and play a game. And I know that sounds crazy, but actually just go and play. I don't do it all the time at the start, but I think, you know, what's the number one question that kids keep on asking when training? When are we playing a game? And it's almost like we've ignored that for the last 35 or 40 years. The kids have been telling them what they actually want. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So don't be scared of actually, as soon as the kids come, right, get yourself in some bids, you sort yourself out and just go and play, and then work backwards. So, you know, sometimes the best games to play are just simply playing the game. But listen, there are loads of stuff out there. Tag games, as Bjorn says, every kid loves that, toilet tag and all those other ones, foxes and hounds. I mean, there's so many that you are allowed to go on Google and look at. So the more fun, the more exciting.
You know,
yeah, loads.
Like all the bibs, you know, that's a good one.
Yeah.
One I've done before where you've had different thirds and you've put people in zones. And then they can't go into the next zone until they've done a 1-2 and they've received the ball back, and then they can create overload. So that's a good one done before.
Good. Sounds like Bjorn's your man, Rich.
I know, yeah.
You should write a book, mate.
I know.
Publish it tonight.
I know Elliot's right on the chat there about.
Is he?
I think he's still there, aren't you, Elliot? But he says about a game as well.
Right, yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Here we go.
You can't just copy my answers, mate. Come on.
It's about the World Cup game, or Wembley, whatever people call it.
Wembley doubles.
I learned something last year about you know, the old school of similar age. You used to score, you go through. Yeah. And then there'd always someone go out. Yeah. Someone flipped that to, I can't remember who told me it, but basically everyone stays in. You just keep a tally, because the ones who go in, show away.
It could be half an hour until you're back in again, couldn't it? Yeah, you're right.
So you're getting penalised for going. It's this little thing like that. I took that away. But anyway,
good.
On that note, I know Asif's not said anything tonight, but I just wanted to see if he's still jogging. Last week he came on, he was jogging.
Oh, was he jogging? Oh,
He
brilliant.
was jogging last week, which is great. Asif, if you're able to let us know before we finish. But thanks, guys. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Ryan,
Thank
Elliot.
you. Thanks, Bjorn. Thanks, Elliot. Thanks, Hassan.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Rich.
Really good again.
Thank you so much for tonight. Well done. Stay safe.
Just quickly show you what's next. I know you guys are avid listeners, and I know Bjorn's got things on Wednesday, which he's doing now. It's great, but we can pick up again. Andy Ritchie's back tomorrow with back tomorrow with a podcast. So really interesting career Andy has. So definitely worth a listen if you can. And then Emerson's back with Adam Colley on Thursday. And United 99 versus Arsenal. We're going to pick up best 11. Asif's in the panel. Elliot, you've been dropped, but I'm going to invite you back next week, Elliot. Don't worry.
I'll go somewhere else. Honestly, is the Hampshire FA in anyone?
Dial in again, mate.
Oh, Rick.
I've got to rotate it.
I'm only joking.
But you were great last week. And then really interesting CBD on Saturday. So Manisha Taylor, MBs, and coach and lead in the foundation phase of QPR. Doing a little session on mental health for players during COVID-19. So hopefully that will be decent. Have a great evening. What's left of it?
Thank you very much.
There's a chat coming. Oh, he's on more of a walk now.
He's on a walk.
He's on a walk.
Brilliant.
So, Asif, well done though for exercising, mate, for listening. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you real soon.